Respiratory and Meningeal Pathogens Research Unit. That's at Wits University. Prof Madhi, good chatting to you. Thanks for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So here's that question. Yeah, where are we now and where are we going to? Prof Madhi, do I have you on the line?
Yes, I'm on the call.
Yeah, I was saying, where are we now with regards to COVID-19 and where are we going to?
So South Africa, where we are currently, is that we sort of still in a trough of the second wave for most of the country, but there are 3 provinces, including the Northwest, Northern Cape, and the Free State, where there's a significant amount of viral activity, and in fact, the beginning of a 3rd wave. In Gauteng as well, there is some places where we're seeing increasing the amount of new cases that have been documented, indicating that we might well be at the start of a 3rd wave in Gauteng as well.
And so those slight bumps in the midst of a trough. I mean, is that a cause for a serious concern, or because I'm wondering, how big is a wave?
Yeah. So in the Northwest, Northern Cape, and the Free State, it's more than just a bump. There's a clear upward trajectory, which basically tells us that it's pretty much moving into the midst of a 3rd wave. In Gauteng, it is much more subtle, but I think in all likelihood, what you'll see during the course of May, as we head into the cooler months of the year, is increased transmission because people are more likely to gather in poorly ventilated indoor spaces. So it's very likely that over the course of the next few weeks, you'll start seeing increase in viral activity and the number of newly documented cases in Gauteng as well.
And that would you attribute that to cooler temperatures as we get into winter, or would you attribute that to a higher degree of, call it social mingling?
It's more about social gatherings in poorly ventilated indoor spaces. Obviously, in the winter months, you're less likely to keep your windows open and your doors open, and people are more likely to congregate indoors. And if they're not careful, unfortunately, that sort of circumstances lends itself to what we call super spreader events, where you get much quicker transmission between people than would otherwise be the case. So the gathering in poorly ventilated indoor spaces is the major driver when it comes to the upswing in terms of activity of the virus.
I mean, and do you think people, it's a difficult question to even answer, but do you get a sense that people take that seriously, that point that you made, ventilation is important, social distancing is critical, or do you think they just adhere when they have to, and when they're not being seen, they couldn't be bothered?
Yeah, I think people are more likely to adhere to it, when we're peaking with the wave, rather than trying to prevent the wave from occurring. Yeah. And there probably isn't any sort of scenario where we can actually completely prevent it. But what we can do, which is really essential, is to draw out the next resurgence for a longer period of time, rather than having it take place over a short period of time. Because if the same number of cases take place over a short period of time, it means that our healthcare facilities will be overwhelmed, which indirectly would relate to an increase in terms of the number of people to die. And that is what we're really trying to avoid. It's not about trying to prevent people from being infected, because that's probably beyond our ability to achieve. So it's really making sure that we limit the rate at which people get infected, rather than an issue of the number of people that are infected over a period of time.
Yeah. I mean, talking about people congregating, certainly many of the audience that we speak to right now listening are following some of the rituals around Ramadan, so higher numbers of people in the mosques. And I was at the Halton Mosque yesterday, certainly bigger numbers for the evening Taraweeh prayer. Then there's an Eid coming up as well, whether they're going to be Idgahs, whether they're going to be in the mosque. Either way, there's certainly more people meeting each other than ever before. How much of a big concern is that for you? I mean, you're not in a position to pronounce what people should do, and you can't declare lockdowns, etc. But is that a big concern for you?
Look, any gathering indoors is a concern, and especially if there's not adequate ventilation. So I would strongly encourage all of the mosque management to ensure that the windows are kept open, and people need to wear face masks. Unfortunately, I go to a place where very few people wear face masks as well, which is a major, major problem, because it only takes one person in a poorly ventilated area to probably infect close on to 50% of the rest of the congregation. So ventilation is absolutely important. The wearing of face masks is important in those sorts of settings.
Yeah. Let's talk about the numbers. I mean, over 10 million tests conducted, like 55,000 people have passed on in this past year, 1.5 million positive cases so far. When I spoke to you, I think in June, 2 days later, in fact, I was COVID positive for my own podcast, right? At that stage, when the numbers were far lower, you said, in fact, your estimate is 1 million people who are positive. They're just not being tested. What do you think now? How many people, in your opinion, are positive?
Yeah, certainly. So the first thing in terms of the number of people that have died, that's probably close to 250,000 rather than 55,000, based on the South African Medical Research excess mortality data. And that excess mortality is completely synchronous with the documented cases of COVID-19, indicating that much of that excess mortality is COVID-19. We've just completed a survey in Gauteng, and as an example, in Gauteng, the number of people that have been infected right through till probably the middle of January is between 3 and 6 million, just in Gauteng, of a population of 15 million. Fortunately, the majority of people that have been infected with the virus have been completely asymptomatic, meaning that they wouldn't even know that they were infected with the virus. And even of those that were symptomatic, most were mild. So infections is a sort of, the number of people that have been infected is difficult to quantify in the absence of doing the testing of the blood randomly in a population to try to estimate that. When it comes to the documented cases, we still need to understand that South Africa's rate of testing, for every 1,000 of the population, we're testing about 180 people. A country such as the United States, as an example, tests 1,200 people for every 1,000 of the population. So the number of new cases you diagnose is simply a function of the number of people that you test. If you test fewer people, you diagnose fewer cases. India is a good example where despite reporting 360,000 new cases in a single day yesterday, their rate of testing is 6 times lower than the United States, suggesting that they probably underestimated the true number of people that have been infected, anything between 5 to 10-fold, and probably no different for South Africa.
Okay, so I mean, those are significant numbers. So to get confirmation, you're saying not 50,000 deaths, more than likely 150,000 deaths, and you're saying in Gauteng alone, around 3 to 6 million people could well be infected. So the infection part is where I want to stay with. So that's the bad news, that it's so much more. But the good news is that it's so much more without them being hospitalized. So that sense of herd immunity could explain why there has been a slowing down, right?
Well, I wouldn't call it herd immunity. It's unlikely that we're going to reach this magic threshold of people infected that will get rid of the virus, which was really inferred. But certainly, as you correctly point out, the large number of people that have been infected actually puts us in a reasonably good space. In that infection, even though it might not necessarily protect against mild reinfection, it probably confers protection against severe disease. And what we need to focus on is the prevention of severe disease and death, rather than believing that we can prevent people from being infected. So the high force of infection that's taken place does put us in some sort of advantageous position when looking into the future.
So practically, how then do the authorities focus on not so much infection, but on severe disease and death? Practically, how does one do that?
The most important way to do it is firstly to ensure that our messaging is targeted to those individuals that are at high risk of severe disease in terms of what they need to do, what they're responsible for to ensure they minimize the chances of being infected. But beyond that, the other important component is we need to be wise in terms of how we use our COVID-19 vaccines and how quickly we get those high-risk individuals vaccinated. So it's all about ensuring that we get the high-risk individuals vaccinated in the shortest period of time, and that will assist the country being able to get back to a relatively normal life, even with the ongoing situation of the virus.
Let's talk then about vaccines. So, I mean, what's your assessment in terms of what has South Africa done around vaccine acquisition and rollout?
Look, we've obviously been extremely delayed in terms with regard to the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine to the general population. There is a vaccine that's being used in healthcare workers as part of a study but beyond that, we only hopefully will start now vaccinating in about 2 weeks with the Pfizer vaccine. So we are delayed. And in our view, the start of the vaccination program in the middle of May is going to be a bit too late to mitigate the consequences of what is likely to be a third wave It starts towards the course of the end of May, June. But at the same time, it's important, like I said, to ensure that we get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible.
And
so we certainly...
Yeah, carry on.
Go ahead. So we're certainly not one of the sort of exemplary countries when it comes to being successful with the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. But I think it's important that we actually get started as quickly as possible.
And your thoughts very quickly about the ability to scale vaccines to the masses beyond the medical staff, right? I mean, some may say, yes, we have the ability. Others are rather far more skeptical. And that, of course, we know is completely linked to the relative security that we all want, isn't it?
Look, I think it's going to be a major uphill battle. The target of the Department of Health is to vaccinate anything between 150,000 to 300,000 people per day for them to meet the targets which they've set. And that's 7 days a week. In any country with a given population of South Africa, to achieve those sort of numbers would be a major achievement. I don't think we're going to reach those numbers. And that's the reason why I say we need to be wise and focused in terms of who we wanting to vaccinate when. The other major problem that we face is the supply of vaccine in terms of timelines and the quantity of vaccine that's going to become available. It's not going to serve much use to get millions of doses of vaccine after we've gone through a fourth wave. We really need to get those vaccines into the arms of people as soon as possible to maximize the benefits of their vaccine.
Absolutely. Here's the last thing. You use the word focus. So from the Minister of Health to the ministerial, to the advisory committee, right? What's the one thing that South Africa needs to be doing like ASAP, one specific thing?
Get vaccines into the arms of high-risk individuals.
Just repeat that point.
I said get vaccines into the arms of high-risk individuals.
Okay, there we are. Let's leave it at that, Professor Shabir Madhi. Important information coming out. Thank you for your time. Get vaccines into the hands of people so they can get vaccinated to ensure that we can keep those numbers down. Doing it afterwards, post third wave, is almost like, getting to the birthday party after the birthday. That's a complete contradiction. I know that, but I think you get exactly the point. By the way, talking about parties, there's a need coming up in about, 9 days or thereabouts. So my question to you is, how soon before Eid do you buy your Eid clothing? Is it 1 day before, 7 days before, 3 weeks before, or even before Ramadan itself? I'd like to know. We'll pick out some of the WhatsApp comments from you, and you can do text or voice notes, 061 766 0355. Now, what about defending our democracy? Are you interested? You should.